Who is most likely to threaten to take the throne from a weakened Clemson team in the ACC? Now, my first response, don't ever say I'm going to stand up for you, Pitt. My first response is, where do you want me to send these angry Pitt folks? Because I checked the record books again, checked them a lot today. Pitt won the ACC last year, and they didn't beat Clemson in the ACC title game either. So yes, it is perceived, in all seriousness, that even though that happened last year, that was the blip. It's still Clemson's conference. Even Alabama has had down years every now and then, yada, yada, yada. All right, so let's work off that. But then let's say it goes sideways again for Clemson, and we're looking at a more prolonged period of Clemson not just utterly laying waste to the conference. Which team, if that were to happen, would be the one that steps up and is viewed from this point moving forward over the next few years as the alpha program in the conference? I've got to go to Miami. This doesn't necessarily happen this year. I'm saying if that were to happen, the reason I default to Miami is because I'm thinking talent acquisition. I'm thinking get the players. You can talk to me all you want to about how Mario Cristobal's not proven as a head coach and hadn't won on the grand stage. We're talking about the future, okay? So theoretically, if this happened, it would happen in the future. It would have to be Miami at first for me because they have the best chance to have elite talent acquisition. But they're not the only one capable of that. They're just the one that, I guess percentage-wise, I would roll with. But the second one's North Carolina because of the same reason. It's the talent acquisition. We're not talking about having one pop year. We're not talking about doing it big in one 10-win season, but elsewhere you sink back to your average 7.5 or 8-win type deal. That's not taking over a conference. Which programs are capable of legitimate year in, year out, double-digit win expectation level? It hasn't been what North Carolina's done, but it's about talent acquisition. Who has the roster to potentially do that? What did we talk about earlier today? What have I talked about for about the past year? They've got back-to-back-to-back top 15 classes. No one else is really doing that in the ACC. They got to develop them, obviously. Have not done that yet to the degree that they need to win at this level. But a lot of those guys are still young, too. You know, I don't write someone off because they didn't squeeze every last drop out of a true freshman class. They've still got a long way to go with those guys. But North Carolina, I've told you, I love their staff. A lot of folks love that area of the country. A lot of folks have long since looked for a reason to go play and coach there. Mac Brown's done it. Good staffers are choosing to go there because there's a reason now. You can win at North Carolina. Good players are going there because you can win at North Carolina. Haven't done it yet doesn't always mean we'll never do it. Gene Chizik's the defensive coordinator there. I'm really intrigued by how he fares this year because you got some folks who have succeeded going into the TV booth and then coming back out. You got a lot more in multiple sports where the game's passed them by. Now, I think Chizik's still been really involved and he's been really dialed in on the game. Probably taken a lot of visits that you don't know anything about, met with staffs on his own dime in his own time. So I don't think that they're going to take any huge step back. In fact, quite the opposite. I think they'll take steps forward this year defensively. North Carolina will be the second one. Let's go with Pitt, though. Pitt has to be mentioned here because Pitt just won the ACC last year. And so if they were to win it again this year, that would be a streak, you know? And it would not be the Clemson Tigers on that streak. So what we could have is we could have a situation where every year people look for a reason out there, anything under the sun, that gives them an excuse to bet against Pitt. And then Pitt could just be one of those underappreciated, overlooked, rock-solid developmental cultures that always gets every last drop out of every player on that squad, and they end up there every year. That could happen. That would have to be their formula. Pitt would not rack up untold amounts of 4- and 5-star recruits. That's not reasonable. That's not their path. They know that's not their path. That doesn't mean they don't have a path, though. And especially if Clemson's out of the way in this scenario, there's no Goliath that you have to slay every year. Pitt could do that. They won the ACC as recently as last year, obviously, but also they just showed you something that's important. They showed you the ability to attract transfer portal quarterback talent. Now, if you continue to do that, and the old history book that we've been flipping through a lot tonight says once you do it one time, it's kind of a domino effect, whether it be traditional recruiting or portal recruiting. Still a young era, obviously, but let's see if Pitt's able to do it that way. The fourth one is North Carolina State. I paused for a second because North Carolina State does not get a lot of mention on the show. And I've had accusations thrown at me that we don't talk about them enough. And you're right, we don't talk about them enough. So North Carolina State is the fourth team here. They're not going to like that I left the state off. NC State's the fourth team here. NC State, they love that they're a quiet contender. They were last year. They will be again this year. Now, I'm going to do my part and try and mention them more. But NC State could basically duplicate what I just said about Pitt. They'd just be a couple of states further south. And with better access to talent, NC State's got to have that year. If they can just have that year, play for an ACC title, for example, if they could just have that year, it would rub some of the anonymity off the program. They've landed some good players. Make no mistake about it. They need more of those kind of players to sustain a run. And to do that, they have to have more of at least a regional brand and a regional identity. There's a lot of anonymity still around that program. That doesn't mean they're not good and not full of good folks. Quite the opposite. But they need that to get the kind of athlete and the quantity of those athletes to sustain a run. That really boils down to doing something this year. They've got the team to do it. They got a lot of important pieces back. They've got a lot of cohesion there. They need to have one of those years this year because they can parlay that. They can dovetail that. Choose your nomenclature. They can use that to hopefully snowball their way to now a multi-year run of success in the ACC instead of building up to a couple of years and then falling back down.